All who truly followed Jesus reflected the light he radiated. But Jesus foretold that after the death of his apostles, there would be a falling away from pure worship. That apostasy would be so extensive that genuine disciples would practically disappear until the conclusion of the system of things. At the same time, a counterfeit form of Christianity would flourish. And so it happened. So-called Christian churches deviated from Christ's teachings. The result was the abuse of power and untold suffering. This was a period of deep darkness.
In the centuries after the establishment of the Christian congregation, we see how many of those who were taking the lead in the Christian church or the Christian congregation started to likewise love worldly wisdom. These ideas that came from Plato and other of the Greek philosophers started to infiltrate the so-called Christian thinking.
And so the apostates wished to blend Christian teaching and Christian tradition with pagan religious ideas. And the idea was to make these things more acceptable to other pagans so that pagans could be drawn into the Christian religion.
As the centuries passed, apostate religious leaders obscured the light even further by keeping the Bible in Latin, a language no longer understood by most people. Yet, at certain points during this darkness, there were still individuals who felt keenly the need to read and understand God's Word. For example, in the 1100s, a French merchant known as Vaudey commissioned a translation of Bible books into the language of the common people. 2 centuries later, Catholic priest John Wycliffe wrote powerfully against unbiblical practices of the Church. By 1382, Wycliffe's team released the first translation of the Bible into English. His students, known as Lollards, preached the Bible's message to anyone who would listen. By 1495, the invention of movable type made it possible to print all or part of the Bible in 12 languages. Soon, people were reading it for themselves. And some who did began to discern that the Church had gone off course. In the 1500s, such men as Huldrych Zwingli, Martin Luther, and John Calvin preached the need to return to the original principles of Christianity. These men and others tried to expose hypocritical practices and uphold Bible teachings, even though this put them at odds with powerful religious authorities.
You can see ones that were willing to stand out as being different, even though they didn't have a full knowledge of the truth.
But standing out led to persecution. And persecution often led to compromise, especially when it came to preaching. Nevertheless, in many lands, the 1600s and 1700s were marked by a strong upsurge in Bible study. In England, many learned men refuted the Trinity doctrine as unscriptural. Among them, scientist Sir Isaac Newton, poet John Milton, and chemist Joseph Priestley. Besides rejecting the Trinity doctrine, Priestley declared that the teaching of the inherent immortality of the soul was false. He held that the first-century Christians had the true faith, and that any change to that pattern of belief was a corruption.